Hello, my name is Bob Tipton, and I'm the software developer doing the digital version of Saratoga. This video is intended to be an introduction to the design mode feature, and it's primarily going to be used during the beta test sessions to let testers set up unusual situations or situations that can verify individual rules. So to get into the game, we're just going to choose play on this PC. Design mode will not work in multiplayer mode. You have a choice of scenarios. The list of all of the special rules for the scenarios are displayed. And then within the game, individual turns will have, at the start of the turn, a pop-up will display relevant rules that are unique to that turn. We'll choose play as both hot seats. And we see we're at the start of turn 1. Only the British player can act. At the beginning of the turn, there will be a die roll to determine fog. And if we receive dense fog, the entire turn will be skipped. Moderate fog will prevent strategic road movement and will also prevent defensive artillery and rifle fire phases. We got moderate fog. You can see the table here on the right as well. So we can close this. And now we know that the British have initiative for this turn automatically per the scenario. And remember from the earlier note that only the British act in this turn. So I can zoom out using the mouse wheel. I can drag the map to look around by clicking and holding, and then I can zoom back in. These gray buttons are for when units are stacked in a hex. It tells you the total number of strength points that are in the hex. This is relevant for movement. You can't move through a hex that has 6 or more strength points in it. And by clicking, the L indicates that there's a leader in the stack, at least one, and the asterisk indicates that there's at least one artillery unit in the stack. If you click on the indicator, you'll see a window that will show you every unit in the stack, and you can select it in the window to make it more convenient to find. So now let's try the design mode. We'll click on the menu in the upper left corner. We just have simple buttons here for now. This is an early build of the game. But we switch to design mode. And now you'll see we have a bunch of choices for things that we can set up to customize the situation. For the first test, we're just going to test whether or not the game prevents users from moving a unit into prohibited terrain. So we're not going to need much of this, but what I will need to do is I can choose a unit. We'll pick the Grenadiers. And when I click on the board, they'll be placed in that hex. And then we can go ahead and exit design mode and then move over closer. This hex here is a marsh. And marsh is prohibited terrain for pretty much every unit type. So we're going to try, it is the British movement phase. We're going to try to move the Grenadiers into the marsh to verify that it's being prevented, and also to verify that the highlighted hexes, these are the valid destinations for the move, that those are correct. So we choose the unit, then we choose the hex, and you can see that there is no highlight on the marsh. So that seems to be correct, but we'll go ahead and try to move into the marsh. And we get a command failed message that destination terrain is prohibited for this unit. And that's the behavior that we want to see. So I would consider that a successful test for the movement feature. Okay, now we're going to use design mode to easily test that the stacking limits are being enforced during movement. I've gone back to the campaign scenario. This is the start of the game, and you'll see at the beginning of the game the British player has 2 stacks that actually exceed stacking limits. You can't have more than 6 strength points in a single hex. These markers are red to highlight to the player that these stacks exceed the limit. This is a starting situation for the scenario. It's the player's responsibility by the end of the first turn in which they can move to reduce the strength points in these hexes to 6 or less. Otherwise, they'll have to suffer step losses until they comply. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some units here on the road and then try to move through them with units that would exceed the stacking limit to make sure that the game is preventing that. So I'm going to go back into design mode by clicking the menu, then design mode, and then I'm going to find a likely unit to use. We'll say the Grenadiers because they're 5 points. I'm going to place them here, and then I can close this and I can go ahead and exit design mode. So now I'm back to playing the game. I'm going to go into this hex and I'll choose the 20th. They have 4 strength points. The Grenadiers have 5. And you can see it's highlighting the possible valid destination for this unit to move to. So I'll move them to hex 1930. And now you'll see that they're not allowed to return to the hex that they were in because the stacking limit is exceeded. And they're not allowed to move in with the Grenadiers because their combined strength points would be 9. If I go ahead and click the hex just to try to complete the move anyway, I'll get an error message that moving into the hex would exceed stacking limits. And that's the behavior that we want to see. Alright, so now I'm going to undo that move and we're going to test an exception to the rule because every hex can have 6 strength points and 1 artillery unit and any number of leaders on top of it. So the artillery unit doesn't count against the stacking limit. So I'm going to find an artillery unit and then I'm going to move it adjacent to the Grenadiers, and you can see that the hex is still highlighted green, and if I click in it, moving the artillery unit is acceptable, and I'll click unit move complete to end that move. Okay, now we're back. And you'll notice that the strength point counter here has changed color to gray to indicate that we haven't exceeded the allowed stacking limit. But now I'm going to check that the other exception that multiple leaders can go into a hex without exceeding the stack limit is being enforced correctly. So I'm going to choose Burgoyne and I'm going to move him. And you see that he's able to move into the hex. We'll do unit move complete. And then I'm going to go into design mode just to make this easier. I'm going to choose Fraser, put him on the map closer to the hex that I want to test, and then we'll move him into the same hex. And you'll see that that's allowed. And that's the behavior that we want to see. Now the final exception that we want to test is that no more than 1 artillery unit can be in a hex. So we're going to attempt to move a second artillery piece into this hex. If you look at the hex, you can see we already have Jones in the hex. So we're going to try to move Spangenberg. And you'll see that there's no highlight, and if I try to click in the hex, I get a command failed. 2 artillery units in the same hex exceed stacking limit. And that's the behavior that we want to see. Now we're going to explore the programmed die roller feature that's in design mode. And what this will let you do is script out what the die rolls that the game generates will be so that you can test a particular combat situation if you want to get a particular damage result so that you can make sure that the game is treating that result correctly. This is the tool that you want to use for that. So the way we use it, you go to the main menu, design mode, and then program dice. and you can just pick what die rolls you want in sequence up to the next 10. If you don't like it or if you make a mistake, you can just hit reset list, and then when you close, whatever sequence you programmed in is going to be the sequence that's generated. If you left the list empty, then you're just going to get random die rolls, and any die rolls that happen after the end of your programmed sequence will just be random. So for this test, we're going to make sure that Morgan's rifle fire works correctly. So I know from looking at the printed charts that Morgan has 3 strength points, and he's firing at the Earl of Balcarres, who is adjacent to him. So he needs a 4 to hit. That would be reduced to a 3 because of Morgan's first fire bonus. That's what this yellow box represents. Rifle units who have not fired yet in the game get a +1 bonus the first time that they fire. So that would mean he would need a 3. But the other exception is that the Earl of Balcarres is light infantry. That's what this LT in the white box represents. And firing at light infantry incurs a -1 die roll modifier. So those cancel. So Morgan will still hit with a 4. And we'd like to see that the game handles the Earl being disrupted. And on the rifle fire damage table versus non-artillery, that would be a 7 or an 8. So we want to see a 4 for the first roll and a 7 or an 8 for the second roll. So we'll set that up. We'll go to Program Dice, pick our first roll and our second roll, close that, exit design mode, and now the game is in artillery defensive fire state right now. We just skip that by hitting done. The British have no possible rifle attacks, so they just have to acknowledge that by hitting OK. And now the Americans can declare an attack. The way you do that is you click on the firing unit, you click on the target, you'll see a line drawn to represent that that's the attack that's happening. You hit fire, and then you have the option to declare additional rifle fire attacks. In this scenario, there's only one rifle unit, but in other scenarios there may be multiples. But once you're done, you just hit OK. The reason for this is both sides get to fire in the rifle fire phase, and all attacks are treated as being simultaneous, so none of them are resolved until all have been declared. So once you hit OK, it will resolve the attack. We get our first die roll, which is a 4. You can see our die roll modifiers: rifle unit first fire, -1. Target is light infantry, -1. I'm sorry, rifle unit first fire is +1. The net die roll modifier is 0. That means we got a hit. Our second die roll came in as a 7, as we scripted. The target is disrupted and must retreat 3 hexes. And then I also recreate the tables here and highlight the relevant boxes that correspond to the net die rolls. So when we hit close, the Earl gets the disrupted symbol, and he must retreat 3 hexes. And you'll notice he gets highlighted each of the ones that are valid. And then when you're done retreating, you can hit done. If you're unhappy with one of your choices, you can hit undo to get back to the beginning and then try a different path. Then you hit done, and the rifle fire has been resolved. You'll notice also that the British lost 1 army morale due to that result. But that's how you can test combat results by using the program die roller. This is also useful if you want to check that morale checks after combat, after the initial close combat attack, for example. You want to make sure that the morale checks are being treated correctly. You can script out those die rolls in advance as well. Let's try that test again, but this time with Morgan's first fire bonus removed, so that we can demonstrate that we can toggle this value back and forth to make sure that it's being applied correctly in the game. So we have the same starting scenario. I'll zoom in slightly here. We'll go to the main menu, design mode. We'll select Morgan, and then toggle first fire. You can see that the box has gone away, and then we'll choose Program Dice, and we'll put the same 2 die rolls in, a 4 followed by a 7. Close and exit the design mode. Now we'll finish the defensive artillery fire. The British have no possible rifle attacks. The Americans will declare the same attack, Morgan against the Earl of Balcarres, with fire, and then we say OK for no additional attacks. We roll a 4 again, but you'll see our die roll modifiers only include the target as light infantry. We no longer have the first fire bonus, so we don't get a damage roll. So we can see that that feature is working correctly. In future videos, we'll go over more details on some of these other choices, setting the game state, for example, reducing units, eliminating units. Eliminating units is pretty basic. You just choose a unit and then click eliminate, and they are gone, and you will see them in the score. You can view the breakdown of the score by clicking this question mark button to get a list of all the factors that result in that total score. Now let's talk about what you would do if you found the bug. So if you find a bug, the most helpful thing that you could send me is your saved game file. The way you save the game is you click your main menu, hit Save Game, you type a name for the file. Try to be slightly descriptive. It's bug for first fire, for example. Hit Save, and that file has now been saved to your system locally. In order to find that file to send it to me, you can click the main menu and then hit Open, and that will open the actual file folder on your system where the saved games are kept. And then you can take that file and email it to bob@hexesofwar.com, for example, or post it to the Discord if you're in the beta test group. And that will give me all the information I need to recreate the game. I hope this has been helpful, and I hope that the beta testers enjoy testing the game and we're able to eliminate any possible issues with rules interpretations. And I look forward to getting feedback from everyone about the game. Thanks.